Hello, everyone. Hello. Well, you see behind me, there's Shannen Doherty, the actress. There she is, who passed away in July this year, July 13th, 2024, at the age of 53. Now, this is November, so it's some months past her passing. And I had wanted at that time to do a video in honor of her and her work and her life, which I always found to be complicated in relationships, I'll say. But when she died, there was an immediate release of a funeral list by which she said she doesn't want these people at her funeral doing their PR, thing. And at the time, I thought that was a different but respectful because she has had challenging relationships and she didn't want to buy into the whole, you know, paparazzi propaganda of Hollywood. And she was just being real about it, I guess. These are all my words. But the delay in posting her in honor of Shannen is I wanted to do some research as to what these relationships were and some of the names that were perhaps on that list as to why she felt so strongly. It was not, could not have just been doing their PR thing, but she had to really dislike the names and to be so motivated to make them published or at least present them to someone to enforce her wishes. I'll put it that way. But as I began to look into and do just a smidget of research, I really found that to me, she had a complicated, tumultuous, difficult time with people. And there was just, I found myself scattering all over the place trying to find a good, solid relationship. But every one that I did find seemed to have some of its rockiness. Now, many of us have relationships that are challenging and difficult, and people can still stay in our lives. But it seemed to me in the discovery of some of this that she was quick to abandon them or quick to say, I'm going to close that door now. I can only get that from literature, from reading, from researching, not knowing her. But at the same time, it was difficult for me to put the pieces together to even do the honor. And at one time I said, I'm just not going to do it. But it was never put to bed, I'll say, for me not to do it. And so here I am now sharing with you bits that I found about her, which would make her do a do not attend funeral list. Let's just look. I'm going to have to read some of it in review because I don't want to misquote a lot of it. And I'm going to drop her IMDb as well as her Wikipedia and any other works that she's involved with or was involved with, I'll say, into the description box. But she grew up a child star. She had been um, on Little House of the Prairie as a young child. She had been on Girls Just Want to Have Fun. She had been in Our House. She had been in Hate. I believe it was Beverly Hills 90210, which most of us know her from, when she worked on that show for 4 years. And then the show after was just called 90210, and she was there for another 4 years as it revived itself, I'll say later. So from 1990 to 1994, it was Beverly Hills 90210, and then it rebirthed itself 15 years, 14 years later as 90210, and she did 4 years. She also was in Charmed from 1998 to 2001. Now, it was in Charmed where I think that she found difficulty, and in Beverly Hills 90210 that she found the greatest difficulty with two names in particular. In Charmed, it was Alyssa Milano, and in 90210 was Jenny Garth, by which both women she had tumultuous, just high velocity disdain with, meaning from one to the other. And even with Jenny Garth, they actually had a physical altercation on the show, on the set of 90210. Now, there is back and forth about how she and Jenny Garth made amends many years later. But Jenny Garth's name was still on the list. Now, maybe Shannen hadn't gotten around to taking it off, but her name and Alyssa Milano's was at the top of that list now. That is a work setting, and I do know that people can get very disdained with one another at work, hot, heated, and bothered. And so it doesn't surprise me that the level of toxicity between them existed. Also, because Alyssa Milano for sure grew up as a child actress. Jenny Garth, maybe not so much a child, but younger. She was younger. And from that, I derived this. Hollywood puts you in, the bigger you are a star, the more godlike you can become, the more fans you can become. That is the fanfare of Hollywood. But it is make believe. And you get everything you want. And growing up in that industry makes for a very spoiled, disobedient child who can just clap their hands and get whatever they want from their agent, their managers, and even disobey their own parents because they have been made a star. Now, it's common. I did a couple of videos in the past, especially on the set Nickelodeon, where the kids are they're just very tantrumish, very spoiled, and they have teachers that come and give them their schoolwork because they can't go to school. They bring them to, and they just have tantrums with it. It's very difficult, very difficult. I'll put it that way. So I believe that Shannen grew up in that. She grew, as I said earlier, she was on Little House on the Prairie. So when you grow up in that, it is who you are, just like you and I. How we grew up, our surroundings, our environment, our upbringing becomes who we are. Now we can shift, shape, adjust that as adults later in life, but the core of who you are is your upbringing. And I believe the roots of being tantrumous, a tantrumish type child, has always been with her, and it carried on into her adult life. So let's just look at her adult. I'm not even going to talk so much about her work. As I said, I'll drop the IMDb in the description box as well as her Wikipedia. I'm talking about her personhood. As an adult, she had been married 3 times. In her first marriage, it lasted a year. In her second marriage, it lasted a year. In both of those, it wasn't a full 12 months years. It was close to a year, but it was the first one, Ashley Hamilton, was from 1993 to 1994. And he is an actor. He had played in such films as Off Key and Iron Man 3 and Cats Dancing on Jupiter. And then she later married, 8 years later, Rick Solomon. Now, Rick Solomon is a high stakes poker player. And he became actually best known a year after his divorce with Shannen for his sex tape with Paris Hilton. But he himself was troubled. He had been married and has been married 4 times himself, or 3 times. So he's been married also 3 times. So there is Shannen with her toxicity, marrying someone with toxicity. And they stayed married for about a year. And then she took another 8 years. So maybe 8 is her lucky number, but she took another 8 years off before she married Kurt Isaswakian, or no, it's Isser, Iswarienko, however that's pronounced. She married him in 2011, and she actually stayed with him until her death in 2024. But the understanding is that they were not together and that she had filed for divorce in April of 2023. But the divorce wasn't finalized until shortly before her death, and it was made finalized, in which she had removed him. So there she is again with her actions. She takes actions to remove and abandon people. She took action right before her death to finalize it and remove him from her wills and her inheritance because she had no children. And so she was sure not to leave everything to him, you see. Now her health began to take a toll on her in 1999 when she was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And then in 2015, she was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And that had spread to her lymph nodes. Later in 2016, so about a year later, she revealed that she was receiving anti-estrogen for the treatment to shrink the tumors. Um, but she had rather decided to do a mastectomy. Later on in years, she underwent chemotherapy and radiotherapy following surgery. So she announced that her cancer was in remission right before 2020 when COVID appeared. Then later, the cancer returned and it's stage 4. So here she is, poor thing, had been battling cancer for all these years. And in November 2023, she also revealed that the cancer had spread to her bones and she had trying to seek treatment for the cancer that had spread to her bones. And she was calling for a miracle. Now, this is a very tough journey. Um, Very tough journey for anyone. But there she was with her hardships in her health now. And just looking at her life, I see the yin and the yang, the hot and the cold, the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, so prevalent, the sweet and the sour, the love and the hate. So clear. And in both dimensions, they were powerful. She was one of those rare breeds that carry power in both the dimensions of the yin and the yang. And now this is not an assessment. I am no scientist, but these are just my words, my observation of being interested in how her life was so challenging that she would make sure that certain people were not at her funeral. Like, what would actually make a person? Now, I'm sure she's not the only person in the world who ever did that. Maybe we all know someone, or maybe not, and maybe it's not as known. But since she's a publicly known, well-known person, it was public information. It was made known. Um, and so I'm looking at that. And so back to her relationship, particularly with Jenny Garth and Alyssa Milano. They too had that. They could get anything they want. And don't tell me what to, that catty girl, that mean girl way. And when you're that way, it's very difficult to embrace your own shortcomings. It's very difficult to be told no when everyone tells you yes. It's very difficult for someone else's light to shine while yours is shining without wanting to grab some of it. It's the mentality of an egoistic person. Now, She's rest in peace. It's not about her, but it's about her power of using the yin and the yang and her hurt in relationships, friends, at work, in marriages, and how her health also suffered deeply. And she would be a warrior and raise back up. As I said many times, the cancer would go into remission and then it would come back with stronger force. She battled this poor thing from 1999 when she was first diagnosed with the Crohn's disease all the way until she died on July 13th of this year. So from 99 to 2024, I mean, that's a very long time. That's 24, 25 years of battling back. So in Shannen Doherty, I find her to be a person who fights back with life and will fight back with great animosity and will stand her ground and would speak her truth. And she's the type of person you're not gonna with and not get it back. So I find her to be a fighter. Now she's also an Aries. She's born in April 12th. And so Aries is a fire sign. It is so April 12th, 1971. So there she was. It is the calmest of the fire signs, Aries is. So you have Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Um, they're unique, I'll just put it that way. They are fire signs. They are unique, particularly the Aries and the Sagittarius. Now, for whatever you like or think about astrology or whatever, some of the things are noteworthy in a type of behavior. And some of them, it's just like food for thought, if however you want to embrace that. But being under a fire sign for her truly shows what fire energy. She had the courage to fight back. She had the fire of her spirit. She had the yin and the yang, and she would actually work them masterfully. She was combative, it seemed, but she seemed to have been responsive to anyone who came for her. And she seemed to have let them know what a cougar they came for. So she was a fighter. And for that, we have to all recognize. We all recognize the fight in a person. We all recognize what they stood up for, what they wouldn't tolerate, what you don't dare do. And despite the fact that they may have battled all their life, they left a legacy by which you'll remember that they battled all their lives. And so that's how I look at her life, more than her wonderful acting on 90210 and Little House on the Prairie and other wonderful things that she did with her life. It was fascinating to find her fight back mentality and her ability to say, even when I die, I'm going to get the last by letting you know you're not invited. Now that's power. That's the yin and the yang, and may she rest in peace. I hope you learned something from this. It's a very different honoring I'm doing, but like I said, I just could not do it because I found just such interest in her. And if you find the time, look at some of her final interviews where she was very clear, very mindful, very rich in speech. And all along, she was very close to dying, and she knew it. So there you go. The yin and the yang stayed with her, and may she rest in peace. If you've gotten this far, please click like. And I love you. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. Enjoy it. Bye. Good night.